Hello, and welcome to the Higher Enlightenment Podcast, brought to you by Higher Yields Cannabis Consulting, your seed to sale business solutions team. My name is Adam, part of the creative team here at Higher Yields, and today's episode is about what you don't know about air quality, but you should. And today's guests are Adrian Giovenco from Inspire, Anthony Atkins from Higher Yields Consulting, Josh Rembush from Buyers. So let's get on with the show. Let's start with the self-introductions. Let's start with you, Adrian.
Thanks, Adam. Great to see you guys. I'm Adrian Giovenco. I'm the founder of Inspire. We are intimately involved in design, build, and operation of cannabis cultivation facilities and curing facilities. We've been involved in this business focused exclusively on horticulture and cannabis for over 7 years. I've been involved peripherally beyond that up to 12 years ago in the Northern California Bay Area, particularly. We offer HVAC and dehumidification systems that are integrated together and are controlled and monitored with a data cloud type system to be able to really use data and science as a tool to drive your cultivation decisions. Giving you the ability to have close adherence to set points inside of your cultivation spaces is really what allows you the ability to go to the next level and start to use the environment as a crop steering tool and to truly utilize all of the different systems and money that you've put into a cultivation facility, the lights, racks, irrigation, fertigation systems, all the different parts and the CO2 enrichment delivery, all of those systems and all of those independently are ways that you can help control and steer the crop. But the environment really is what brings all of those together and allows you to maximize that. And so that's the role that we play in the industry.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for being here. How about you, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Anthony Atkins, Chief Revenue Officer here at Higher Yields Consulting. My background is deep into business, market, partnership, development, revenue, and client acquisition. So, very important to me in terms of connecting to the market and, of course, Higher Yields connecting to the market and the market connecting to Higher Yields. The partnership side and the development side is all about positioning and making sure that we're working to solve issues, to resolve problems, to make sure that we're being efficient in terms of, from point A to point B, if you will, and really working, with our partners in partnership development in order to bring the best of the best to the industry, to our clients, in either a corrective environment, a startup environment, or an expansive scaling environment. So how air quality elements and odor mitigation and analysis and making sure that the plant is given the best environment is very important from a business development perspective in order how to position and identify what those particular points of partnership are. So great to be here.
Well, thanks for being here, Anthony.
Josh Rembush. I'm the Vice President at Buyers Scientific. Buyers Scientific is a niche engineering firm that designs and builds air purification and odor mitigation equipment. We're a bit unique in that we have a dedicated division called Emissions Analysis that is staffed with 2 active PhDs that allow us to not only research the plant, understand the gas phase emission rates of the plant, but also take an active role in helping facilities diagnose and understand existing air quality challenges, whether that be related to dust, pathogens, and or odor. And so it's a unique offering in addition to the technology, which we take a lot of pride in because it's all been third-party tested. And so we help cultivators, processors, manufacturers identify and correct problems, not only for health and safety considerations, but more often for compliance-driven considerations in finding balances with community and making sure that fugitive emissions don't impact local communities.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so first question, what are the biggest issues in air quality that affect cultivation staff?
Sure, I'll jump
Well,
in.
Josh, do you want to take that from maybe from a perspective of the sort of the challenges that you run into specific to air quality, and then maybe I can take it more from a holistic HVAC type of approach.
Adrian, that sounds awesome. Yeah, thank you. So some of the immediate challenges that we're seeing right now is keef dust. We see where dust is creating significant issues, issues that should not be taken lightly. And I think this group probably is aware. Unfortunately, we've seen 2 fatalities now, specifically related to keef dust. And it's something that we should really embrace. One of the responses that we see is provide personal protective equipment. Bayer Scientific would say, and as an undergraduate in safety management, industrial safety management, I would say that PPE should be a last line of resort. Engineering controls are the proper way. And before you even get into engineering controls, again, assess the current air situation, understand particle count range and size. And so dust is an ongoing issue for cultivation facilities. The second thing that I'll comment on, and then I'll turn it over to Adrian, is pathogen control. So this group knows quite well that mold and fungus and yeast as well are the 3 primary that we see right now that can really wreak havoc on a facility. And so whether it's yield optimization, the impact to the bottom line, and or we're seeing now where if a large batch of product doesn't pass and the community gets to learn about it, now all of a sudden we have significant damage to a brand. And so when we look at the dollars and cents, the time invested from a stakeholder down to the master cultivator, it can be very damaging, again, not to understand or rely on air sampling to understand current spore count, levels of aspergillus or yeast and mold. So these things are significant. Not only can they have a potential health and safety impact, they can affect the bottom line. And ultimately, Bayer Scientific would suggest understand your air quality first. Then we can spec equipment. And then the appropriate next step is then test the air again once the controls are deployed to validate or verify what you believe to be true. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Adrian, for maybe a bigger picture approach.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you going and starting there, because I think that's really what's most important, is to know, what are the issues that we're seeing coming out of it. And to me, from a HVAC and facility infrastructure system design perspective and operation, I kind of want to take a little bit of a step back and look at it from a perspective of what type of business and facility are we trying to create here, right? And what are the short and long-term goals of that business? This is a manufacturing facility, right? These are true industrial manufacturing facilities that are being designed and built and operated. And many of the stakeholders that are involved, I guess in general, there's a lot of different definitions, I guess, of that in general. And from our perspective, we like to advocate for a culture of clean, and the ability for for a business to be able to produce the best possible product that is clean and safe for their consumers. And in order to do that, you need to do exactly what Josh was just sharing, where you need to design it in such a way that you know what you need to attack and design around, and then you need to test it and make sure that it really was done in that right way, right? Did it get, it's every plan that an engineer has ever drawn is the perfect plan until it gets built, and then you realize, like, hey, did the contractor pick up this or pick up that? Did it actually really get done in the way that it should? And did it get commissioned properly at the end of it? And these are challenges that we see throughout the industry, and almost regardless of how experienced some different design and construction team members are. on projects. And it's a really, really big opportunity for cultivators and cultivation businesses to take advantage of as a way to not only reduce their operating costs, reduce any sort of, challenges with labor and compliance and OSHA and, kind of all of the, health and safety of their workforce, be able to provide a clean and safe product for their consumers. And, oh, by the way, it's the way keys to a profitable business. And these are all connected together in the way that you think about it up front and design a facility with these goals in mind from the beginning. And then you have those gate checks as you go through to make sure, did that design get built and commissioned, and is it now operating the way that it was designed? And then a year later, go back and check it again. Are we still there where we designed it, or are we doing better, hopefully?
How about the biggest issues in air quality that affect the plants? Are they the same or different?
It can be the same, it can be different. I think we're starting to see, I guess in general, hop latent viroid, as far as a pathogen, is probably the number one answer that cultivators would give you from a plant health perspective. In general, that's not something that we're going to get rid of with better air cleaning. But it does, the air cleanliness and the general cleanliness of a facility has a part in it. And in order to truly try to get rid of pathogens, you need to do the process that Josh just sort of went through. Maybe I'll kick it to you from that side of it, Josh. But it's it's a matter of identifying what the challenge is, and then a proper solution to be able to mitigate it, and then be able to test and make sure that you really did handle it.
Yeah, from an airborne standpoint, yeast and mold are the hottest ones that we see. Aspergillus is right behind it. And one of the things we see is that cultivators are spending time and energy, whether it's neem oil or whether it's pesticides, treating the flower. What we do not see as a common practice is proper air filtration to remove or stop the transmittal of these spores. And that's where a little step goes a long, long way. And so I would also add that here in Colorado, it's not uncommon that so much of the flower is radiated as a way to ensure that they're able to pass the QA/QC testing. And so how do we move away from that? Or how do we use that as just a last ditch option, as opposed to relying on something like that, or dipping full flower in different products that are hitting the market now that claim to remove or make inactive mold and fungus? I think, at least from my vantage point, most of the folks that I know in the business are really interested in clean product that's safe. And so as we talk about really proactively addressing air quality in these cultivation facilities to try to remove or at least minimize the transmittal of these mold and funguses, the primary ones, is I would call low-hanging fruit at this point. And there are safe technologies on the market that have been third-party tested to do so. One editorial comment is there are also 3 or 4 products on the market right now that are not safe at all, that have not been third-party tested and not been reviewed by universities. And that's a bit concerning because there's no federal oversight. We see with our two PhDs, where there are technologies being used today that are frightening. They are creating byproducts, and the industry should be aware of that. And so anyway, I'll leave it at that. But air filtration for those things is a proactive approach to minimize and stop the transmittal of mold and fungus is a primary start.
Yeah, I was just about to ask if there's regulations that deal with air quality.
So when it comes to pathogen testing, I'm not aware of that. All the pathogen testing I'm aware of is specific to the flower and/or product. Adrian, you might be able to speak better to that tonight, but for air quality concerns, we're not aware of any standard. Now, I know that NIOSH is doing some extensive research and development of potential regulations for biogenic VOCs at this time. Bayer Scientific is also working directly with a third-party institute, which I cannot name at this time, and a large cultivator here in Denver to also do some third-party testing on air quality specific to particulate count and also pathogen. So we see where these entities that don't necessarily have a dog in the fight are getting engaged to try to help the industry get better overall. But today I'm not aware of any other regulations. Adrian, are you when it comes to air quality?
No, not indoors. I mean, it's, you know, there's a much larger conversation here around air quality in general beyond just plant, you know, in a facility such as these, right? We just lived through a pandemic, and it's somewhat amazing to me how quickly everybody, you know, went and grabbed MERV 13 filters and, you know, threw them in, and we're starting to put in other types of air cleaners and things. And you know, and I've been in the HVAC industry for almost 20 years, and the interest in better air cleaning devices and better air cleanliness overall in all industries is very, very low. And it's really it's quite concerning, to be honest, like, you know, to think about the type of air that our kids breathe at schools, and that everybody breathes in office buildings and even at hospitals and other places that you would think would be very clean. Has to do in general with a lot of deferred maintenance and lack of maintenance in most facilities, really through all different types of industries. So there's a much larger conversation around that. And I know that ASHRAE, which is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers, that I'm deeply involved with, has been working on this heavily. Obviously, with the pandemic we just lived through, there's a lot of different air cleaning technologies that were then kind of thrust into the fold. And like Josh just mentioned, some well validated with third-party data and testing and shown to be effective and safe. And many others that just don't have that background and backup. And so there's a real challenge for consumers right now to be able to figure out and pick through what is really safe and effective and what's not. You know, so I will kind of leave it to the organizations like ASHRAE and ASTM, a standards writing body, and others to help with trying to put the right codes in place. To me, this is in general is back to like your business metrics, right? Like, this is not going to be in the cannabis industry. You're not going to have a profitable business if you have 20 to 50% crop loss from mold and powdery mildew and botrytis. That's just the way it goes, right? Like, you can't write off that amount of product and still expect to be able to turn a profit or even break even. And so, you know, it's, again, to me, it's really it's all very well aligned around, you know, safety, high quality product, and profitability for these businesses if they were to look at it that way.
Adrian, awesome comments there. And Adam, if I could add one thing,
Sure.
I think we're seeing more and more where a handful of our clients have come forward and said, we're prepared to invest in our employees. Let's talk about the culture at our facility. Let's talk about our commitment to clean air for our people. Let's talk about that proactive investment, right, in our people. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that. And some of the companies that have had that mantra from the beginning and continue to invest in their employees, they keep the good folks around. And so I think there's a lot to be said from a culture building standpoint. It's no secret that inhalation safety concerns are now very serious in our industry, and we must react. And reacting with a piece of personal protective equipment is not enough. And so I'd like to add that there is a big opportunity, whether it's an MSO or it's a small cultivator here in Denver, to really invest and show that they're investing in their people and leading the way and developing a culture amongst their people that compliance and safety is the leader. And so I think that should be noted.
Okay. Yeah, we sort of touched on it, but how does air quality affect operational efficiency?
Yeah, I can kind of start on this one, and I was going to talk about this some here a moment ago, and I think it makes a lot of sense now. It's like the active air cleaning is a great way to address, you know, specific types of pests and pathogens that are in the air. But to take a step back and to help mitigate crop loss and what we just talked about a moment ago, but to take a step back, that those are sort of still somewhat while they're active solutions, they're still somewhat reactive to what I would consider a poorly designed environment overall, right? The reason that you have molds and mildews is because you can't control the environment inside of that grow space. And if you can truly control the environment, and I find it's somewhat comical almost that we're working within an industry that's called CEA, which stands for Controlled Environment Agriculture. Yet those first two words, controlled environment, are something that I would say more than 50% of cultivation facilities around the world are not able to actually attain. These are not controlled environments in the way that we all think that they should be and could be. And so just to take that little bit step back and say, like, the design knowledge and the technology is here today and is available and is affordable to do it in a way where you can design your facility and your overall air environment in such a way, and with the appropriate amount of dehumidification capacity, particularly. That's really the number one thing that we see almost across the board, is that there's not nearly enough dehumidification capacity, or it's just a lack of understanding by the design engineers or the cultivation team or those that put the project together, where they ended up in that spot. But the technology and expertise is out there today to build facilities that give you true environmental control. And with that, you can then augment it further and get even better air environments beyond that with active air cleaning, which is something that we advocate for in our base traditional design for how these facilities go together, because you're looking for the best bang, best risk reward and return on investment for what you invest into that infrastructure. And so trying to figure out what a good balance between capture filtration and active air filtration and biosecurity is really where you get to play some of that risk reward game on it. And that's really where Josh and Byers comes in from that perspective.
Yes, I guess the only other thing I'd like to add is that working with a company like Inspire is ideal at from a design build standpoint. Although Adrian's equipment has tons of capabilities when it comes to air quality, in situations where there may be additional support or additional needs, we find that being at the design table is absolutely ideal, because we can work together to understand what Inspire's needs are to make X, Y, and Z happen. And at the same time, we can recognize, okay, you may need a certain face velocity for one of your pieces of equipment, for example. Sure, we can work with you and we'll slow the airflow down to meet that requirement, just as an example. And so I think that team approach is really critical. And I also will say that when it comes to understanding the emissions of the plant, I would recommend that you really partner with a company that truly understands. When it comes to transpiration of the plant, I know that there's a company that knows everything back to forward, and that's Inspire. Not to sound self-serving, but when it comes to the emission of the plant, Dr. Alex Gunther and Dr. William Visuete, there are no other gentlemen or females on this planet, quite frankly, that understand the gas phase emission rate of the cannabis plant right now. And so all I'm suggesting is rely on those experts so that they understand your design, your facility, and what your goals are, so that these, whether it's the mechanical, whether it's the air purification vendor, can all work together for a holistic solution.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just to put a cap on the operational efficiency piece, if it was so interesting, because a few years ago, efficiency was like far down the list on the list of the goals of designing and putting a facility together. And now with price compression where it's at and the challenges that the industry is going through, it's been clearly thrust into the spotlight here again, which is really good to see. And it's just highlights overall the importance of balancing both your capital costs and your operating costs, and understanding what the overall design approach of a facility is, so that you can get really what is at the, you know, the hope and the goal is that you get the best total cost of ownership solution chosen for that given lifespan that you're designing for.
Okay, so what technologies do we currently have to deal with these situations?
Adrian, you want to talk big picture, and then I'm happy to.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Happy to. So in general, you know, where I think everything really all came from was passive filters, right? Where you're using filters inside of an air handling unit in the HVAC system to capture any, you know, any particles that are flying through the air, right? The air, in general, the speed at which those particles and the air is moving through the air handling unit systems is, and depending on where in the system it is between 500 feet per minute and 2,000 feet per minute, right? And so you have to be able to understand what is going to, you know, what size particle is going to be caught by what type of filter, right? And so there's a rating system that's called the MERV rating system, and you'll hear the terms like MERV 8 filters or MERV 13 filters or HEPA filters used, all of which fall at different places along this MERV rating system. And it's really based upon the size of the particle that's going to be caught and the efficiency or effectiveness of catching that particular size particle and larger. So, and I don't have it, the MERV rating scale in front of me here. We can, you can throw that up on the, you know, as a follow-up, or you can check it out. But like a MERV 8 filter, you know, MERV 3, MERV 5, MERV 8 in general are kind of, we call it in the, you know, for lack of a better term, call them rock catchers almost, right? Like these are filters that are set for, you know, multiple microns and larger, and to the effectiveness of the 50 to 75% range. MERV 13 is really what we've seen to be utilized as the best way to try to get basically particles that are around the size of 1 micron and larger to be captured. And then HEPA filters is, you know, is like what, MERV 18, 19 on that scale in general, or close to it. And so we're talking about those filters being able to capture very, very small particles. The challenge with those different types of capture filters is that as you increase that efficiency of the filter and that effectiveness and getting smaller and smaller particles, the pressure drop increases through that filter. So it's all a balance really between the overall fan energy that you're using, the amount of space that you have available in your air handling units and systems, and what's going to make the most amount of sense, which is really one of the main reasons why we don't see HEPA filters used predominantly in these types of applications, is because it takes up a lot of space. It's a more customized air handling unit. It costs a lot more, and there's more fan energy there, and the replacement cost is very high and things. And so there's other types of more active air cleaning devices, which I'll throw it to Josh here in a moment to talk about a number of them. We've evaluated lots of them on the market as well. And I would highlight what Josh has shared, where it's, you know, third-party testing data and validation and the demonstration that these systems are safe and effective by a third-party testing agency is extremely important in any of these, because if we remember back to the days of the sharper image and the ionizer, right, where they're sending, you know, they're sending these ions out, and Josh probably has a whole maybe I'm butchering this story here, but you know, like the sharper image is no longer around as a result of the lawsuits that were put down on them by these air cleaning devices that were not tested. And so it's extremely important for human safety as well as plant safety in this case, to really make sure that you know that what you're getting is effective. And maybe from that, I'll turn it over to Josh to talk more about the different types of active air cleaners that could be paired with or used in conjunction with passive air filters.
Yeah, Adrian, I really appreciate your comment about the MERV rating and HEPA filtration when it comes to cannabis facilities, because we totally align there. HEPA filters are great at what they do. However, they're expensive and they draw a significant requirement for power in almost all cases. So one thing that I would point out before we talk about particular types of technology is that I will say one of the things that we have discovered in the last 3.5 years with our staff is that there are very effective air filtration technologies that are used in museums, surgical centers, medical facilities. But these particular types of air filtration devices may not be safe in cannabis facilities. And the reason for that is we see an excessive amount of biogenic VOCs inside a cannabis facility, truly billions of compounds being created. And so there can be secondary reactions depending on the type of technology, and I'm not going to get into details today, but there are some technologies out there that when they operate in these environments, I mean non-HEPA, non-fiberglass woven type technologies that are not safe in these environments because of the very, very rich BVOC environment, because the cannabis plant emits biogenic volatile organic compounds, which by the way are 100% safe. There's nothing to be concerned when we talk about those types of BVOCs. They're naturally occurring as opposed to anthropogenic, which are man-made VOCs. But I want to put this out there that please be sure that these pieces of air filtration technology have been tested in cannabis facilities, because I can assure you through third-party testing that we've done and validation or vetting of other equipment that we've done in the past, we did see the creation of carcinogens in these environments, which is very, very serious. So without getting into details on the different types, I would suggest to do some research, rely on experts, and again, look at third-party testing inside of these facilities, because the creation specifically of aldehydes is very real in these environments. And neither the master cultivator, the facility manager, or the employees would ever know this is happening, because nobody has third-party tested some of these pieces of equipment in these environments. So without being without creating fear, proceed with caution and do your due diligence when it comes to whether it's removing particulate or particulate that has viruses, bacteria, mold, or fungus attached to it. That's how we evaluate those. And so look at particle size and look at that efficiency removal over time. The maintenance of these systems is absolutely critical. Nobody would ever drive a car for 10 years and not change the oil or check the tires. And so Adrian hit the nail on the head early on and said a lot of this comes down to maintenance. A lot of this comes down to supporting these facilities. And we saw this early on. And that's one of the reasons that Bayer Scientific never sells a piece of equipment and walks away. We continue to maintain the equipment. We provide operational support and testing of the third-party testing of the equipment as we go. And so again, find a vendor that's vested in your facility and is prepared to back and service this equipment.
Okay. What does the future hold as far as technology?
I guess I'll lead with that. One of the things that we haven't really talked about are fugitive emissions. And so I guess one thing that I would mention is that there are a lot of claims today when it comes to odor mitigation, and it's such a subjective topic. It can be very difficult to prove. It can be even more difficult to defend. And so when it comes to those types of emissions, Bayers in particular, we are firm believers in molecular filtration. The term carbon scrubbing has been around for many, many years. And we are aware that basic carbon scrubbers have kept people out of jail for years cultivating cannabis. And we see that. However, on today's scale, I would advise the listeners, the viewers, to really understand molecular filtration in a much more detailed way, and porosity CFM ratings, face velocity, sequestering rates, things of this nature. And so that's one topic we hadn't touched on yet that I just wanted to briefly mention. When it comes to pathogen control, Bayer Scientific has tested and vetted, and we really like what we're seeing with electrostatic precipitation and filtration. So as we talk about the future of air cleaning, we love a very, very low amp draw, sustainable solution that allows us to really pull nanoparticles out of the air with very little restriction. And so that equates to energy savings, which is exactly one of the things that Inspire has leveraged to make them the firm they are today, getting the biggest bang for the buck for the least amount of energy invested. And so when it comes to dust and pathogen control, I would step forward and say that electrostatic precipitation, specifically ASPRA, is the patented approach that we solicit and manufacture. We believe that's a way of the future when it comes to addressing both particles and all pathogens with one type of air filtration technology.
Yeah. And we, from our perspective, we've, there's other types, there's many other types out there. And we could probably do a whole podcast just on like pros and cons of different air cleaning technologies and things that are out there. One that we've used and have third-party testing data on, and in the particular, one of the things that I think that you find, and what Josh just alluded to, is like, each of these types of technologies has many different ways that they can be constructed and put together. And so it's really important to make sure that the specific application of what you're using is going to be safe from that perspective. And so one of the ones that we've used over the years and have had really good success with, but there's many out there that haven't been able to have the same type of success because of the way that it's applied, is a technology called photocatalytic oxidation, PCO for short, is a way that you can clean the air as well, of smaller particles. You're not actually removing those particles out of the space. Similarly, you're looking to try to render them inactive in that way. But again, it's taken us significant amount of time to test the air and the particulate count with these different types of technologies, and installed in different types of configurations, really to see what the best overall technology would be in combination. And I just thought I just kind of checked to make sure that I had the name of it right. But ASHRAE just this summer released a new standard called Standard 241, which is control of infectious aerosols, that I think is going to help uplift the level of education throughout the whole engineering and construction community in general around infection risk management, and clean airflow rates and the type of air change rates that you want to use. And then also it goes into requirements for the different types of filtration and air cleaning technologies that we're talking about here, which I think is going to help significantly try to, level the playing field. And hopefully the result of this is that the consumers are able to see only products that are compliant, and not have to try to wade through that themselves to determine what is going to be safe and what's not going to be safe.
Okay, so when should cultivators start implementing these technologies and upgrading their facilities?
I would say yesterday.
Yesterday.
I mean, it's an opportunity. It's a massive opportunity. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Anthony, it's a way for you to chime in some on, like, cultivators' needs, and from a business perspective, like how does this ultimately affect the business and the business vitality of a business and an operation?
Well, definitely for us, I mean, we're always taking a risk mitigation and investment protection and viewpoint, right? So everything is built upon that foundation. So if you're not mitigating risk along the way, if you're not protecting investment along the way, and that starts at the genetic level. I mean, all the way through the process, because you don't want points of failure. You don't want points of contention in your system that could eventually either fall out of compliance and be shut down because of some pathogen that gets into, the system and ruins the process and ruins the operation. So, paying attention to the detail. I mean, higher yields is about from the beginning, from concept, and in terms of that design. So we're always looking at, the buyers, the inspires. I mean, the key elements of our partnership, because of the expertise that you both bring, and because of the risk mitigation and investment protection that we're gonna, together bring to those startup clients. But now you have a whole bunch of opportunities or a whole bunch of existing facilities that need to take a look, spend a little time, slow down to then go fast, and do the analysis, do the assessments, figure out, where the system is weak, and then go through and correct and retrofit and apply the methodologies of buyers and of Buyer Scientific and Inspire in order to be able to take your grow to the next level, take those cultivation, those operations to the next level, and be known as a quality producer, a quality cultivator. So that when it gets to end user, when it gets to client, that it's going to be trusted. It's going to be a great experience, and of course the precision elements, precision medicine of this particular plant that we've have a unique opportunity to be a part of. It will fulfill its goal and origination of what it ultimately was originated to be. So, taking a look at it from a business perspective, taking a look at it as from a developmental perspective, always about risk mitigation, always about investment protection, from the beginning, and then, doing the analysis and the data analytics on your process, on the system is key.
Yeah, Anthony, that was well said. I guess one other thing that I'd like to add that I hear and see when I'm in the field is we don't have an air quality problem. You don't? Okay. Well, how do you know that? Well, we just don't. And so, without being disparaging or disrespectful, because so many of these contaminants are not visible to the human eye, it creates this false sense of trust and security. And if we didn't learn that with COVID, maybe this is another opportunity for us to see things a little bit differently. I think Adrian hit on this at the beginning, is that air quality is absolutely key. And without air analysis, let's get some data. Let's understand particle count. Let's understand spore count. I have so many prospects and clients say, well, I'm passing my flower test. I'm good. And so I'm saying, well, you're good after you radiate the flower. Do you have any idea what's in the air? Where are these things coming from? Where are these pathogens or contaminants coming from? Well, we don't know. Well, let's start with understanding what's in that air. So again, I can't understate the importance of hiring a firm to come in and do some basic sampling. It's not that expensive, and it tells us so much about what's happening there. And back to another point that Adrian's already made, so often we see that it's either a breakdown in the HVAC system, it's a lack of maintenance, or it's both. Or they've taken a facility that wasn't originally intended to cultivate cannabis, and they've turned it into a cannabis facility, and they're wondering why they're having some of these challenges. So for me, it all comes down to data collection. Let's do some analysis. Let's do some air sampling. Let's do some spore counts. Have a third-party trusted lab do the analysis, so you've got something in hand as a baseline to say, no, we don't have a problem, or yes, we do, and here's how we're going to solve it. So to me, it all comes down to understanding the problem. And the only way to do that with air is to take samples.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed. The technology is there to do it, right? There's still a massive amount that's unknown around optimization of this plant, and what it's going to take ultimately down the road to produce the right type of botanical treatments, if it's a medical treatment or a recreational product, and how that's all going to come together. But this is something that you can go and do today. Right. And like you say, Josh, it doesn't cost that much money to do it. It's just a matter of taking that holistic view and investing in your business holistically.
And your people.
Yeah, that's
Your
right.
people.
Well, it's all part of it. I guess I would
Sure,
I would
yeah.
lump that all together,
Fair
right?
enough.
It's the product that you're producing and the people that you have to do it. It's the whole enterprise. And this is sort of just one, one specific item in that whole ecosystem of what it takes. And it's really to me is one of the biggest challenges that cultivators have today, is that there's so many things that they have to get their arms wrapped around in order to be successful. And if you miss some of these important ones, you'll end up paying the price for a long time to come.
Okay, well, I think we're about at the end of the questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or tell us like what's the first step if somebody wants to upgrade their facilities?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, I mean, I think all three of us would say the first step is to understand what you have. And test. And if that, from Josh's perspective, that's actually physically getting in there with particle counters and the ability to test and see what is in the air. From our perspective, that's going and understanding what is the load. This to take another kind of step back, right? This is all about balance inside of these rooms, right? You try to grow, you do whatever you're going to do inside of an enclosed environment. In this case, it's growing plants, which have a very dynamic, psychrometric and, physiological dynamic to them and balance to them. There's water coming into the room. There's energy and via light coming into the room. There's moisture that needs to be removed out of the room. There's heat that needs to be pulled out of the room. All of that ends up is basically just a balance equation to determine what it's going to take to size the systems that serve it. And so from an evaluation perspective, you can go and look at it and say, okay, here's my inputs. Here's the systems that are handling my outputs. Do those match up? Right. And can very very quickly be able to determine, if that's out of balance or not. And then as you roll it up and into the way that Higher Yields and Anthony would share about a holistic facility audit from that perspective. So I think in a way we're parts and pieces of a holistic facility audit to really determine where you're at and benchmark where you're at. And so something that we're starting to see more of is benchmarking against your peers, right? And get more data collected so you can see, oh shoot, we're down in the 30 percentile compared to where our peers are of a facility of the same size. Like, we've got some opportunity for improvement here. Or no, maybe we're up on the cutting edge of 80-90% of that percentile. And so the more data that you can collect to use as that benchmarking analysis and jumping off point, the better.
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
No, please, Anthony.
No, so what I was going to say is really that it's about an ecosystem, and that each part of that ecosystem is so important, not only for the productive element, but a healthy environment in order to be able to produce an end goal that we're all seeking to come after. And every single aspect of the ecosystem is important. And agree, and hats off to the benchmarking elements, the analysis and the data's assessments, really understand where we are. Just like we test water, just like we test our blood, we do our blood test in order to mitigate potential risk. I mean, it's identifiers, it's markers, and understanding those variables, and then applying the solution to remove those in order to keep the health of the ecosystem moving.
Yeah, I guess to in addition to sampling and understanding current air quality, I would say, based on recent experience of the last 3 or 4 site visits that I've done, we realized that the air movement in the building wasn't happening as designed. And so we saw very, very hard to find areas where air was actually transitioning from one room to another, or from a room to a hallway to another room. Or we saw in a very, very unique hybrid greenhouse situation where airflow based on meteorological conditions was causing all sorts of very difficult to identify situations. And so really understanding the air movement. What is happening at these different intervals? Sure, on a sunny day with a 2-mile-an-hour wind, you may have an interior condition of X. But unless it's a design build type of facility that's really sealed, quote unquote, we see where meteorological conditions and outside variables can really affect what's happening indoors. And so we've had a couple here recently where we had to dig a little deeper than usual to get to the culprit, and we got there. But just understanding those nuances of how the building has been designed, how it's currently functioning, what the mechanical was designed to do, and then actually physically what's happening, even by way of using an anemometer to understand where is air moving, where are things happening here? Are there cracks? Is there something above the false ceiling, for example, that might be occurring? So anyway, without getting too far down to the weeds, a site assessment's great, air testing is great, but I would also say really understanding where the air is moving and why it's moving the way it's moving is critical to mitigating dust, pathogens, and fugitive odor.
Okay. Any other final thoughts?
No, very good.
Okay.
I really appreciate the opportunity today.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been very informative. So thanks for being here, all of you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, folks. We really appreciate it, and always good.
Hey, Anthony, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to support Higher Yield.
There, guys.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks.